I have a kid here. Says he's your son.
I'll be right there.
Continuing my rewatch of the DC AMU movies, DC Animated Movie Universe, that's what that stands for in case you don't know. I talked about Justice League War last time. I've talked about a couple more DC animated movies since then, so if you want to check any of those videos out, they won't be hard to find. They're my most recent uploads. With that being said, let's go ahead and jump into Son of Batman. Deathstroke invades the League of Assassins because he wants revenge on Ra's al Ghul for pushing him out. Slade was once Ra's right-hand man, but was kicked out of the league for whatever unforgivable actions he may have done. I'm probably going to be saying Ra's this entire video and not Ra's. You can thank Batman the Animated Series for that. He's deflecting bullets with his sword and holding his own against all these guys with guns, proving why he's the demon's head. Slade gets Ra's where he wants him, suckers him into a sword fight, and he, along with his men, burn Ra's alive. But Ra's is still breathing, so Deathstroke takes the moment to say a few choice words, saying that after 500 years, the world has had enough of him, and the Lazarus Pit won't bring him back this time. Damian intervenes to save him, even though it's too late, and I know Damian was trained by the League of Assassins, but it's still kind of ridiculous to me that this kid can handle his own against Deathstroke, when Nightwing could kick Damian's ass any day of the week, and it's hard for even Batman to take Deathstroke on his own, but this is how Deathstroke loses his eye in this universe. Damian puts a sword right through it. I understand that some of this can be taken as Deathstroke underestimating his opponent, but come on, this is one of the most skilled fighters in all of DC. Once Deathstroke and the former League of Assassins members that betrayed Ra's retreat, Damian runs to the Lazarus Pit with Talia not far behind, only to find Ra's body just in front of the Lazarus Pit. He was making a desperate effort to try and restore his body again, and Damian is trying to do the same, but Talia informs him that the pit can't restore a body that damaged. Ra's al Ghul, or Ra's al Ghul, is dead. She then tells him she's taking him to Gotham because it's time to meet his father.
Where are we going?
Gotham City. It's time to meet your father.
This whole opening sequence is a pretty good setup for the film. It shows us enough about this version of Deathstroke's character and gives him a reason to have a vendetta against Damian. Now we are in Gotham City where Batman is taking on Killer Croc. It's a pretty short but good action scene. I'm glad they used Croc and that he shows up again later in the movie. Something this movie, honestly pretty much all the Batman movies in this universe do, is utilize underused or not so well known Batman villains. The fight between the two ends with Talia tasing Croc from behind, and she's very sassy now that she's with Bruce again, referring to Killer Croc as Batman's playdate and saying she's the only one allowed to bite him. She informs him on Raz's death and is in an extremely flirtatious mood. Batman questions her not being too broken up about her father's death, which given why Batman is who he is, makes a ton of sense. It's a small moment I appreciated. When Talia begins telling him about Deathstroke, we get a little more insight to why Slade was maybe a little salty about the whole League of Assassins thing. Ra's once believed Deathstroke could be a successor, but once he became aware of Batman, he wanted Bruce as his successor. Which, this is always a thing with Ra's. The respect he has for Batman and the acknowledgement he gives him is what makes him such a great Bat villain. I love that the moment Talia reveals to Bruce that he has a son with her, he's a bit dumbfounded and his response is, "You really expect me to believe this?" So Talia pawns Damian off to Bruce. Once they return to the Batcave, Damian refers to Alfred as a servant and Bruce corrects him with saying he's a friend. And Damian is just surveying and critiquing the Batcave. I love the moment Batman and Alfred look at one another, then Alfred tells him he's exactly like Bruce was at his age. Then we get a moment of Damian looking at Dick's Robin suit and Alfred telling him about how he's moved on, and so shall they. Which you gotta appreciate the respect Alfred and Bruce have for Dick's decision. Then there's a great exchange between Damian and Alfred.
I'm not so young that I don't understand sarcasm.
While I am much too old to care.
Back in the Batcave, Bruce is watching an old video of Ra's being revived by the Lazarus Pit. He tells Alfred he's cheated death so many times that it's hard to accept he couldn't do it again this time. This is 20 minutes through the movie and I honestly forgot that Ra's was in it as much as he had been this far. He's obviously a massive part of the story, so I'm glad we did see this much of him. And Batman refers to Ra's as his son's role model, which is true. He says it not with disdain but reluctancy because, as I said earlier, a about Ra's having respect for Batman. Batman also has respect for Ra's on many levels, which is what makes their hero-villain dynamic all the more interesting. Deathstroke has broken into Dr. Kirk Langstrom's home and has he, along with his wife and daughter, held hostage. I'm not super familiar to the Man-Bat character outside of what's been depicted on screen, so I'm not used to him having a daughter. I had forgotten she was a character in this movie, so it just really took me by surprise. But the League of Assassins had a previously established relationship with Kirk, one that Deathstroke wasn't previously involved in, but knows of. So he's taken the mutagen Kirk has been working on for the League to use for himself. At Wayne Manor, it's the next morning, and Damian has been slicing all of Bruce's shrubbery. That, might I add, looks like fantastic work, and if I was the Wayne's gardener, I'd be pissed. But all Batman is seeing in this moment is a new Robin, saying that he has talent. Damian later breaks into Bruce's office at Wayne Enterprises to discuss Deathstroke with his father, telling him he has a station in Gotham and they should go after him to put an end to him once and for all. Then we get a great line from Bruce telling Damian that we don't kill because it makes you just like them. Which this is a concept that's going to take a while for Damian to get his head around. Damian refers to Ra's as a hero while Bruce refers to him as a madman.
We don't kill.
I was taught you destroy your enemy.
That makes you like them.
I'm not the biggest fan of Damian in this movie, but the dichotomy between he and Bruce has been excellent up to this point in the film. Also, Damian hacked into the Batcave to get more information on Ubu, who once worked for Ra's, but betrayed him for Deathstroke. Bruce sends Damian on his way back home with Alfred and tells him to keep to himself and not touch the Bat computer. And Damian's only response is, I owe my grandfather a death. So far, I'm liking this movie a bit more than I did on initial viewing. Nothing too crazy other than Raz's death happened. The action hasn't been to die for, but everything has been solid. I think they've done a great job of showcasing how close Damian was to his grandfather. Later that night, Talia goes after Deathstroke herself, and what I don't understand is she only brought a couple men with her. This is Deathstroke, Talia. This is the man that killed your father. You really think 3 guys are gonna be able to back you up against the greatest mercenary in all of DC when he has an army backing him? To say the least, Deathstroke gains the upper hand rather quickly. He and his men kill her men, but he wants Talia alive, so she is now in Slade's custody. Then we cut to Arkham Asylum, where we get a couple of great cameos while Batman and Gordon are making their way to Killer Croc's cell. These cameos being the Joker and Two-Face. I love how established they made Gotham feel in this movie. We've seen multiple Bat villains, and pretty much all of them are already well established. Which, given this is son of Batman, and Batman is well into his career as a crime fighter, it makes sense. Batman begins to interrogate Croc of Langstrom's whereabouts, and I forgot to mention that this version of Croc has a tail thanks to the mutagen Kirk has been working on. Or maybe it was a separate mutagen because he is working on his old mutagen, the Man-Bat mutagen. But speaking of his tail, Batman rips it straight off when Croc won't give him any information. Batman doesn't kill, but he is freaking brutal, and that's what we love about him. After this, there's a scene of Batman facing a very interesting looking creature. It's a gorilla bat, a gorilla with bat wings. It just makes me think of Gorilla Grodd and Man-Bat morphed together, which I guess that's what it basically is, except this gorilla isn't telepathic. Damian goes to confront Ubu in a hotel room. There are a couple ladies of the night with him, and Damian refers to them as harlots, telling them to leave. This kid has got a vocabulary of an 1800s poet, I swear.
Leave, harlots.
Ubu has these Wolverine-type claws, so a lot of this fight is just the clashing of his claws and Damian's sword, but it gets taken outside into the streets, and by the end, Ubu is beaten pretty badly. Damian can't get any information out of him as to where Deathstroke is, and he's no master interrogator like Bruce, nor does he have the patience that Bruce can have if he has to. So Damian is prepared to end Ubu. He goes for the killing blow, but Nightwing swings in to intervene, grabbing Damian, throwing him a couple feet, and catching the sword like an absolute G. And he has maybe the funniest line of the movie to this point.
The psychos just keep getting younger.
Nightwing and Damian have an off-screen fight while it cuts to Bruce on patrol in the Batmobile, and he gets a call from Dick. The interaction is terrific, as any Batman and Nightwing moment usually is. Dick asks him if he lost something, and Bruce responds with, "I'm not in the mood for games." A pretty perfect Batman response. Once Batman figures out he's talking about Damian, he's on his way to get him, and it cuts back to the Batcave where Alfred is stitching Nightwing up. Damian got a few swings on and cut one of Dick's arms pretty well. Then there's another good moment with Dick and Damian talking about Robin. Nightwing is basically telling him that he can't be Robin, and Damian tries to come back with the fact that he just sliced and diced Nightwing up a little bit, but Nightwing is the one who actually won that fight, so he gets the last laugh. Then there's another exchange between Damian and Bruce on the topic of killing, which is what the entire movie is about. Batman is teaching Damian that killing isn't the way, and this conversation was an important stepping stone. Bruce tells him he wasn't a warrior or a soldier tonight, he was a child. If it wasn't for Dick, he would have gone too far, and that he can't let vengeance guide his actions. Damian asks his father if he's never felt vengeful, and Bruce's response is every day. But you have to keep your center because you can't fight crime by becoming a criminal. He then informs him to stay close, saying that's an order. Damian agrees, and so the new Robin is born.
I'm not gonna like this, am I?
Nope.
This movie overall has done a good enough job with further establishing this universe's Batman, who he is, what he believes in, and what he fights for. Batman then meets with Gordon, and it doesn't take him long to notice Robin. He asks another one, and Batman tells him he'll explain later. This was a humorous line that I enjoyed. Up to this point, there's been a decent amount of humor in the film, and definitely not all of it lands, but I think it's done more good than bad. Batman and Robin go to find Kirk Langstrom because he knows information they need. He is the connection between Deathstroke and Ra's al Ghul. This is a scene that sadly detracts from my enjoyment of the film a little bit. I know that Damian being a little bloodthirsty asshole is part of his character. I'm just thankful that this version will shape into a little less of an asshole in future films. Batman tells Damian to follow his lead, and he does in the beginning. They are being stealthy, sneaking past several of Deathstroke's men. This really felt like a Predator mission in one of the Arkham games, which I kinda liked. Once Batman and Robin make their way to Kirk, Langstrom explains to Batman that Deathstroke has his family, and he doesn't know where he is. Before Batman can do any further interrogating, Damian kicks Kirk across the table, saying he'll make him talk. All of Deathstroke's men hear this. Batman and Robin take out the first wave, but are much outnumbered once more show up, and Batman says it's time to retreat. Robin says he isn't a coward, but Batman tells him not to be stupid, drops a smoke pellet, and they are out of there, only to run into multiple man-bats, which I'll get back to this in a moment. It doesn't take long for Batman to defeat them, and Damian jumps ahead of Bruce to go after Langstrom himself and has a sword pointed to his face. Batman calls Damian a stupid kid while he's alone, then goes to save Kirk from his own son, and a stupid kid is exactly what Damian is. He annoyed me so much in this scene. The lack of patience and critical thinking really makes it hard to believe that this kid is Bruce's son. But he is, and his mind has been warped by the League of Assassins, so in a sense, it makes sense. I just wish they would have gone about showcasing this in a little less of what I found to be an annoying way. Batman takes Kirk back to the Batcave. He has a bag covering his face on the way there, so no secrets were revealed, obviously. There he, Nightwing, and Robin interrogate him, and he gives them all the information they want extremely willingly, which I kinda like that Langstrom isn't a bad guy in this. He's moved on from his past and has been focusing on his family. Speaking of his family, Batman and Damian figure out where Deathstroke is holding them because of a description given by Kirk's daughter to him on the phone. He tells them she said there were snow and 2 mountain peaks looking like cat ears. Robin's eyes get big because he knows exactly the place he's speaking of, Interlaken, Ra's al Ghul's compound. Also, what Deathstroke has been trying to do this entire movie with Kirk, and what Ra's was trying to do with him previously, is create an army of ninja man-bats. They wanted Kirk to develop the man-bat formula in large quantities so they could give it to several League of Assassins members, which I'll give them that this is a very unique concept and idea, but I just don't see Ra's al Ghul or Deathstroke wanting to do this really. I know this is based on a comic. I don't know if this is in the comic, but that doesn't really matter to me. It's an overall weird concept that I don't hate, but I definitely don't love. After this scene, we finally get to see Deathstroke again. Mind you, this is pretty much 50 minutes into the movie at this point, and outside of the opening sequence, we've probably only seen Deathstroke for around 3 minutes total. His presence has been lacking, which is a little disappointing to me. He is watching a video of Robin taking on his men. At first it comes off as him just obsessing over Damian, but then he gets up to confront Talia. She is beaten up pretty bad, chained to a wall. Deathstroke tells her he knows where she took her son, and his focus quickly shifts to Batman. He asks her who he is, and when Talia tells him she won't talk, do what he wishes, Slade responds to her with saying he believes her and just walks away. I really love that. He is curious of who Batman is, but he doesn't really care too much. He's not gonna beat Talia even further just for that piece of information. Batman and Robin go to Interlaken and search for Francine and Rebecca, Kirk's wife and daughter. It seemed abandoned. There's nothing behind any door other than a bed and chains. Batman then hears the sound of a woman's muffled cry and discovers there is a false wall. It is them. They are both scared until they realize it's Batman. Francine asks him where Kirk is and hugs him once he tells her Kirk is safe. Rebecca then runs to hug Robin, and I love Damian's response of "this is totally unnecessary." She gives him a phone and informs him that Deathstroke said he would spare she and her mother if she gave this to him, and asks that he please does not tell Batman.
Robin, you saved us! This is totally unnecessary.
While Batman is leading the two out, Robin stops for a moment to watch Deathstroke's video. He tells Damian that he has his mother and gives him the location. Slade then tells him to keep Batman out of it, referring to him as only a sperm donor, which was a little bit of a nice roast. Going back to the room with the bed and chained for a moment, this was of course the same room Deathstroke was holding Talia in earlier. While on the phone with Dick, Bruce tells him Francine told him about another prisoner there and the signs of torture he saw in that room. Also, Nightwing has been chilling with Kirk in his lab while Batman and Robin do all the hard shit. You gotta love it. Really though, I do love how big a part it feels like Nightwing has once he shows up in this film, even though he's not on screen too much. He tells Bruce that an oil rig in Scotland 50 miles off the coast is likely where Deathstroke is. Bruce then realizes that Damian and the Robin suit are both gone. Nightwing tells him to chill. What's he gonna do, swim there? And of course it cuts to Damian swimming in the water, only a few hundred yards or so away from the oil rig. And my question is, how did this kid just swim 50 miles before Bruce even realized he was gone? That makes 0 sense, comic book movie or not. Damian is making his way through the rig, stealthily following Deathstroke. Batman shows up just before Damian finally does confront Deathstroke. Slade has Talia, and the rig they are on isn't producing oil, it's holding a Lazarus pit. He tells Damian it looks like mommy could use a dip, and Robin pulls out a freaking gun.
Let her go, monster! Now!
Which only seeing this kid use swords the entire movie was a bit of a surprise. Deathstroke has a gun to Talia's head, and since the pit can't restore a body with no head, Damian reluctantly drops his gun. Slade goes for the killing shot on Robin, only for Talia to awaken from her daze and tell Damian to run before taking the bullet for him. Once we get around to Batman Bad Blood, I'll be wondering what happened to all of this motherly love. Slade is shooting at Robin repeatedly, and the sounds of the gunshots is how Batman finds out where they are, which is a small detail I really liked here. He intervenes to save Damian, who multiple times in this film would have been dead if not for Bruce. Deathstroke unleashes his Man-Bat army, and Batman defeats them within seconds, throwing multiple sonic batarangs against the wall surrounding them. He then proceeds to beat the ever-living shit out of Deathstroke. I guess this version of Slade isn't as skilled of a fighter as I'm used to, at least not in this film. I do think his character is much better in Judas Contract than it was in Son of Batman. Batman is in control the entire time, and once he has Slade on the ground, he runs to Talia and picks her up. Seconds later, Deathstroke begins to retreat and Damian runs after him. I love Bruce screaming his name when he picks up the sword. Damian tells Batman he swears he'll end Deathstroke. Then we get a great silent moment with Batman looking at Talia. then toward the direction Damian went. He's obviously very conflicted of what he should do in this moment. The rig begins to flood and explode all at once. There was an aquarium type section on the oil rig. Several man-bats burst through it, and one immediately gets eaten by a shark. So I guess the man-bat formula turns you into not only a monster, but also an idiot. Nightwing and Dr. Kirk Langstrom come flying in on the bat plane and shoot several doses of a cure to the man-bat formula into all the flying creatures. And since this is a movie, they all immediately turn back to human, of course. After this, the final showdown between Deathstroke and Damian begins. It seems that Slade is much more upset about Batman catching Gracia's eye than he ever was about a child taking his eye. Which, fair enough, I guess. He really comes off as kind of creepy when he says Talia would have been his too, though. Like, that's not how love works, Slade. Why would they write you saying a line like that? Sorry, but I don't like my Deathstroke being a creep.
Talia would have been mine as well, until your father came along.
We then cut back to Batman, and the decision he made was to resurrect Talia with the Lazarus Pit. He couldn't let her die, which is a choice that may go against his morals a bit, but it's extremely human of him. The fight between Slade and Damian isn't awful, but it is a little underwhelming. It just really irks me how incompetent Slade seems at times. Especially after killing Ra's in the beginning. These fights, especially the final one against Robin, doesn't seem nearly as close as they should be. Damian defeats Deathstroke because Slade wasn't very mindful of his surroundings, which is very uncharacteristic of him. Deathstroke tells Damian to kill him. He goes on telling him it's how he was raised, it's what he would do, and it's what his grandfather would do. But Damian tells him no, because he is Batman's son too. He's Robin. So it definitely wasn't all smooth sailing getting to this point, and I'm not a fan of some decisions made in this film, especially with Slade, but at least Damian has a realization by the end. Thank Christ. Batman and Talia find Damian and are picked up by Nightwing on the bat plane. They leave Deathstroke and any other men that may still be on the oil rig to die because it is literally blowing up as they leave. I really don't understand why Batman didn't save Deathstroke here. He was literally within feet of him. A real Batman Begins moment, if you ask me.
If you finally learn to do what is necessary, I won't kill you, but I don't have to save you.
The movie ends with Batman and Talia discussing each of theirs and Damian's future. Talia asked Bruce to join her in rebuilding the League. The two of them along with Damian would be unstoppable. We all know Batman isn't gonna have any part of that and tells Talia that their son should stay with him. She says he would want to be with his mother and Batman goes all savage on her ass, telling her he's Robin now. He stays with the Batman. Talia brushes this aside momentarily and asks Damian if he's ready to come. He gives her a reluctant yes, if that's what she wants. Batman gives her a bit of a dirty look and she immediately shifts gears, telling him to stay with his father, for he is very wise, which ain't that the truth. Batman deserves a better son, but great on him for taking up the challenge of raising this kid to be better.
He's Robin now. He stays with the Batman.
I'm very split on this movie. There is plenty I like. I love Batman, Nightwing, Alfred, Gordon, all in this movie. I really enjoyed Kirk Langstrom's role too. I do wish the premise was more than just the League of Assassins developing Man-Bat assassins though. I love the incorporations of several Batman rogues. The theme of killing makes you just like them. Everything Batman is teaching Damian, I enjoy. It really speaks to Batman's character. Similar to Justice League War though, the villain of the movie is my biggest complaint. I absolutely love Deathstroke, just like I absolutely love Darkseid. They are my two favorite DC villains behind the Joker. So I have a high bar for these characters when they are used in anything. I've already touched on why I don't love Deathstroke in this movie. He's not nearly as competent or formidable as I would like him to be. I'm wondering if he would have even captured Talia if she wasn't so outnumbered. It's just something that drives me nuts about this movie because I think there was a ton of potential for this to be great. Parts of it are great, but overall, I think it's an average DC animated movie. For a letter grade, I'm giving it a C. It's not great, but it's not bad. I didn't mind the rewatch at all. The setup is pretty great, but I found the actual premise to be a bit lackluster. Still some great moments, and I still really like this version of Batman though. Let me know what you think about Son of Batman in the comments below. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. If you enjoyed the video, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys next time.